Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 160. Without any delay, start explanation. The members of the diplomatic corps that were chosen to represent both continents for the exchange program were all the best of their respective professions. On the Dolor continent, the leaders of almost every field were soul masters because they possessed the strongest bodies, natural talents, and spiritual powers. With such a huge advantage, they were superior to ordinary people in any occupation. Tang Wulin and his companions were undertaking the task alone at their position. Their overall soul power only averaged around a cultivation base of 4 rings, but they came from Shrek Academy. With the addition of the enhancements granted by their battle armor and the powerful abilities of their martial souls, they were impressively effective. Captain, since when did you have 4 soul rings? Why is your martial soul so different from before? Shulishi asked curiously while he fed steamed buns to Tang Wulin. It was no joke. Tang Wulin's blue-silver grass was now worlds apart from what it had been. Every blade of blue-silver grass was akin to a dragon. Not only was it capable of offense and defense, but it was also even filled with spiritual intelligence that it did not possess in the past. Each of the gigantic vines waved intimidatingly, and they also had an extremely wide range. He managed to block more oceanic soul beast attacks than anyone else in the group. Tang Wulin exclaimed, "Naturally, it would be different now that I've reached 4 soul rings. This is my 4th soul skill. It's called the Blue-Silver Overlord Transformation. Is it cool?" "Cool, ha ha." Shulishi admired Tang Wulin's appetite the most. This young lad could hardly even open his mouth to speak when he ate. The scene was rather chaotic. In the distance, Elder Cai and the great beast that came from the depths were engaged in a fight on the most spectacular scale. The most terrifying part of an oceanic soul beast was that it was capable of controlling the sea, and the power of nature was always dreadful to humans. A soul beast that had achieved a level of 10,000 years was certainly strong enough to cause a mighty torrent. As a result, Elder Cai and the 4 members of the human vanguard had to first make sure that the creatures with cultivation bases of over 10,000 years did not use the power of the ocean to capsize the ships. Otherwise, they could end up in a deadly situation in the middle of this vast sea with no reinforcements. Fortunately, the members of both diplomatic corps were fairly powerful. Some politicians that normally appeared cultured and elegant on usual days were now suited up in high-level mecha as they suspended themselves in midair to join the fray. The 2 ocean liners stayed close to each other with their soul cannons opened up completely and spared no effort in firing at the oceanic soul beast's battle formation to suppress their attacks. Boom! The color of the sky in the distance changed continuously as the terrifying energy fluctuation howled across it. A streak of dazzling silver light transformed into an enormous curved sword and cut through the horizon. A massive tentacle dropped down from above and slammed onto the surface of the sea, creating a giant wave. Elder Cai's figure appeared with a bright radiance glowing on her back. Her entire body bloomed with silk-like strands of silver light. Even so, her situation was not optimistic either. Her face looked ghastly pale while her gaze appeared slightly dimmed. It was apparent that despite her success in severing one of the opponent's limbs, she was rather exhausted as well. In truth, Elder Cai was unafraid of this great beast, given her own cultivation base, but the problem was that the sea was the opponent's home turf. Countless faint speckles of blue light were drawn into the great beast's body continuously from the water. The severed tentacle slowly grew out again with a slow wriggling motion. The speed of its regeneration was not nearly as fast as the rate it took damage, but it was still more than Elder Cai was capable of. Had it been nighttime, or even better, a full moon, Elder Cai could absorb the moonlight to amplify her powers. Unfortunately, the present situation was in the great beast's favor. Hand over the murderer. The gigantic great beast held its position and stopped attacking. Even though it had the upper hand now, its victory was not certain. It was very possible for both sides to be wounded, maybe even fatally, if they were to put up a desperate fight with a tough opponent like Elder Cai. Hand over the murderer and I'll let all of you leave. Otherwise, all of you shall face destruction. There were 8 eyes on the front of the gigantic octopus's head. All the eyes were glowing with a ghoulishly murderous shine as they stared at Elder Cai. Elder CAI spoke coldly, so you think you've won? The soul beast's numbers are already dwindling, yet you still wish to seek your own doom. Do you think that humankind is truly incapable of conquering the sea? I don't know who killed your clansman, but you and I are not from the same clan. We will protect our own clansmen regardless. Destruction for all of us? You can try. A dull voice suddenly echoed in the air at this exact moment. The murderer is here. What can you do? Elder CAI raised her brows slightly. Silver light flashed past her back as all of her battle armor glowed brightly. She was astonished to discover that she did not know where he was when he had spoken. Even though all of her attention was focused on the great beast in front of her, it was apparent that this person was very powerful. With a flash of shadow, there was one more figure next to Elder CAI. He appeared to be an ordinary chef who was dressed appropriately in a spotless white toque and uniform. He clasped his hands behind his back as a dark golden glow diffused around him. The soul rings on his body were of exaggerated colors. There were 5 black and 4 red soul rings. His whole form was emitting a frightful presence that caused even Elder CAI to stare entranced. She was not acquainted with this person, but he was from the ship without a doubt. It's you. The great beast's 8 eyes became fixated as 8 streaks of blue light shot out from its eyes and headed straight for Mu Yi. Mu Yi turned around and looked toward Elder CAI as he smiled. In a relaxed tone, he said, "Leave this to me." As he spoke, he took a step forward. He did not dodge or defend against the 8 streaks of blue light. He simply punched directly into them. It was as if the sky had twisted violently when the dark gold fist blasted out. When the blue light melted away, Mu Yi raised his head to the sky and let out a howl. A set of dark gold battle armor emerged rapidly and covered his entire body in an instant. His aura was immediately elevated multiple times. A pair of large dark gold wings spread open behind his back and a dark gold halo appeared. At the same time, his body was enlarging at a shocking speed. He had already transformed into a giant that was hundreds of meters tall in the blink of an eye, as if he was a colossal pillar that supported the sky and oppressed the sea. The sky and the ground trembled. In fact, the whole area trembled. After transforming into a giant, Mu Yi once again punched out his hyper fist directly at the great beast's chest. A forward battle armor master. Elder CAI gasped softly. She turned around and left, bringing along the silver moon as she returned to the ocean liner. Silver light shimmered as the oceanic soul beasts immediately felt an overall oppressing sensation. She could not fail to recognize that the dark gold armor on Mu Yi's body was forward battle armor. This person's cultivation base was below her own, judging from his soul power fluctuation, but he became someone Elder CAI could not compare with after his body transformed. They were both over rank 90 with a difference of 1 or 2 ranks in their cultivation bases, yet Elder CAI was not confident that she could triumph over him in a battle even without the disparity in their battle armors. It was thus clear that this chef who suddenly appeared was very powerful. He was not a hyperdoluor, but he surpassed the hyperdoluor. She was somewhat jolted. Elder CAI had already figured out this person's identity. In her heart, she could not help but feel astonished. Boom! The great beast octopus and Mu Yi fought ferociously. But in contrast to the battle earlier, they now fought purely with strength against strength. They were colliding with one another using their raw power without any tricks. The force of the water was completely useless in face of Mu Yi's body that was akin to a colossal pillar. The octopus's enormous tentacles lashed against him, while his fist was also punching against the gigantic octopus body continuously. It seemed like the two sides' powers were surprisingly equal. Yet, it became clear that the octopus tentacles could not cause any real harm to Mu Yi. On the other hand, Mu Yi's fist left behind dark golden streaks on its body. The silver light illuminated the sea. The oceanic soul beast's attacks were finally suppressed by the silver moon Dolor's formidable imposing manner. Tang Wulin stood on the icy surface, his gaze burning as he looked at Mu Yi in the sky. He could see the extraordinary splendor in his eyes. This was the first time he witnessed Mu Yi in combat. He had always assumed the Mu Yi could never be on par with Elder CAI since he had yet to achieve the cultivation base of a hyperdolor. However, judging by the current events, it seemed like an entirely different situation. Teacher Mu Yi's combat capabilities were surprisingly terrifying even without his divine mecha. The magnificent dark golden battle armor covered his entire body, making him appear as if he was a god descending into the mortal world. Each attack he launched would cause the sky and ground to tremble, and slowly but surely, he compelled the great beast into gradually losing the battle. Consider this. I neither have the need for a soul ring nor a soul bone, and it hasn't been an easy path for you to have achieved your current cultivation base. Run, now. Seek out someone else stronger to exact your revenge. Mu Yi's arrogance was heard throughout the 9 heavens. Raw? Human? Do you really me so hopeless before you? The colossal octopus sounded infuriated. It lowered its 8 tentacles as 8 blue soul rings surged in its direction from the sea. Its entire body was now enveloped by a ghastly olive green that increased the horrifying aura it gave off exponentially. I'll fulfill your wish, especially since you're seeking your doom. Your timing is simply impeccable to allow me to present my disciple with a welcome gift. Mu Yi's gaze was fixated on it as he said that, his right hand waving nonchalantly in the air. A streak of red shadows appeared abruptly by his side, making it seem as if the sky had been torn apart. In the shock plaguing everybody present, the red mecha that stood 6 meters tall rapidly transformed into an enormous, blood-red long saber. Then, Mu Yi's body shrank to about 10 meters tall, and in that split second, he grabbed onto the hilt and a gush of bloody red suddenly shot out from the saber. It's the divine mecha, countless people gasped out loud. They were right. This was Mu Yi's divine mecha. Tang Wulin did not expect Mu Yi's divine mecha to not fuse with his body, but to also be used in such a manner. Surprisingly, it could even transform into a weapon. Retreat, an unwilling roar was echoed. The 8 gigantic tentacles of the colossal octopus waved in an abrupt manner before leaving behind a thick gust of black smoke from its body that concealed the nearby auras. Even so, Mu Yi was still proudly suspended in midair without even the slightest intention to pursue. The oceanic soul beast that was originally full of life and energy swiftly sank into the sea. They vanished without a trace, like the falling tides of the ocean. The thick black smoke lasted for quite some time before dissipating. Mu Yi waved his right hand once more and transformed the enormous saber in his hand back into the red mecha. The spatial fissure that had appeared in the sky disappeared without a trace, and he returned to his regular size. It may have seemed impossible, but he was now dressed in his spotless, white chef's uniform once again. With this conclusion, the silence and serenity of the sea were overlapped by the cheering that came echoing from the 2 large ships. Undoubtedly, all the attention was currently focused on Mu Yi. He swayed his body as he vanished without a trace. It was as if he had fused into space itself. Tang Wulin was still starstruck as he stood on the surface of the ice. This was the first time he had witnessed combat fought on such a high level with his own 2 eyes. This not only impacted him immensely but every single member of the Shrek Academy group. They had finally realized the true extent that would follow combat fought on this level when they experienced it for themselves. Although both sides did not clash, they were engaged and were exploring the enemy's capabilities from the very beginning. However, the oceanic soul beasts did not pursue the matter in the further and retreated in the end. It was clear to everyone that the events unfolded in this manner because of the huge disparity in their power. They are too powerful. This power, it's simply too powerful. When will we ever be able to possess such power? In a way, Tang Wulin was forced to become Mu Yi's disciple. However, it was only now that he understood the true extent of the body sect's power. He was now convinced that Mu Yi was serious when he said the body sect was once a rival of Shrek Academy. Mu Yi was filled with a kind of loneliness as he made that statement. Even so, if he was already so powerful, how powerful would those in the inner sanctums of Shrek Academy be? Tang Wulin and his companions returned to the large ship in shock. The people there were counting and sorting through those present in the ship to confirm if there were injuries or deaths from the earlier incident. Tang Wulin looked out to the boundless sea and thought about his martial soul's second awakening. The pride he originally felt when his blue-silver grass transformed into blue-silver emperor was now diminished, and he understood that he still had a long path to continue on. he would still need to work his hardest to become truly powerful. Has your martial soul evolved? Gu's voice echoed from his side. Tang Wulin was jerked from his thoughts. He turned around and looked toward Guu before nodding gently. Guu smiled. Congratulations. Tang Wulin replied, I'll need to work harder now. I'll be practicing my forging later after the counting is over. I can begin to forge the spirit forging bedding now. When our one-word battle armor is complete, we'll all be able to work our hardest toward our two-word battle armor. Then, Guu also turned around to look toward the sea. Her gaze was distant, and there was no way to tell what was on her mind. The head count for the entire ship was soon over, and only a small number of its members were slightly injured with the powerhouses guarding the ship. Everyone was present and there were no deceased members. The only person they failed to find was the chef who displayed his martial prowess during the earlier incident. Naturally, Mu Yi did not enter the earlier battle with his usual outlook. However, Tang Wulin could still figure out that it was him. It was not that difficult for Elder Cai to look for him either. The large ships began to sail once again, and silver light shimmered in Mu Yi's cabin. Before long, Elder Cai appeared in his room. Cai Yua regained her usual aged and senile look at that moment and lost the unrivaled beauty she possessed earlier. You're Sect Master Mu Yi of the Body Sect, right? Cai Yua squinted her eyes as she looked at Mu Yi standing before her. Mu Yi smiled indifferently. That's right. Everyone was on the same level, so there was nothing much to hide. I would never have expected Sect Master Mu Yi to finally complete his full-word battle armor. Cai Yua praised in admiration, you're probably the only person who's both a full-word battle armor master and a divine mecha master in the world. Mu Yi chuckled softly. What if I told you that I'm not a full-word battle armor master? Would you believe me? Cai Yua was stunned for a moment before she smiled and shook her head. This is your secret, and it's one I don't wish to find out. However, I'd really like to know why Sect Master Mu Yi is following our diplomatic corps in the direction of the Star Luo continent. Mu Yi's gaze turned cold. Is that your business to mind? Cai Yua raised her brows. She was not a good-tempered person either. At that moment, the atmosphere in the room had suddenly turned intense. All right, if you're going to be that way, we've nothing much to talk about. Go carefully, Sect Master Mu Yi, Elder Cai spoke coldly. A silver light flashed only once in her eyes before she vanished without a trace. Mu Yi harumphed but was unperturbed by her actions. No other powerhouse in the diplomatic corps of both countries had the capabilities to threaten his presence there. Elder Cai frowned hard when she finally returned to her room. She would have definitely lost her temper earlier if someone else took his place. How could she not worry when a top-ranked powerhouse suddenly appeared within the ranks of the ship's crew? Heck, she could not even determine if he was friend or foe. Although the Body Sect was no longer on bad terms with Shrek Academy for many years, both parties were still not on friendly terms. Still, the Body Sect was still the Body Sect despite falling from its prior glory. The Sect Master of the Body Sect in the past was as powerful as the Sea God Pavilion Master. In truth, there was nothing she could do to Mu Yi. She was still incapable of taking the Sect Master on toe-to-toe with her current combat capabilities. Even within the ranks of the Sea God Pavilion, there would not be many who could suppress Mu Yi. For this fact alone, she hoped that he was a friend instead of a foe. Elder Cai walked to the balcony and as she waved her right hand, a silver ball appeared in her palm. Then, a sparkling silver light flickered as her fingers moved rhythmically like the wings of fluttering butterflies. Before long, rays of silver light weaved an intricate pattern in mid-air. She then slowly pressed the silver ball onto the pattern, causing silver light to flash, and the ball to disappear into thin air at the very next moment. Tang Wulin had broken out of an encirclement and broke through to rank 40, resulting in the evolution of his martial soul to the Blue-Silver Emperor. The leap in his power was not only evident in combat, but also in Tang Wulin's forging efforts when he attempted to forge in the ship's forging room. He could sense a significant change to his body. The difficulty one would have to endure to spirit forge was directly related to one's soul power and cultivation base, regardless of skill. In the past, Tang Wulin had been depending on his blood essence to replenish his soul power in order to succeed in forging. However, it was difficult for him to have enough excess energy to complete fuse forging at the spirit forging level or with 3 alloys. It was apparent that this time would be different. His cultivation base had elevated, causing his blood essence and soul power to meld into a single entity, converting themselves into an unusual energy. The energy took the form of 2 colors, white and gold. Both could be fused independently or together as he moved the energy around. When both energies were fused, his soul power would take on a platinum sheen and supply immense energy to Tang Wulin. His soul power was extremely pure and precise. With his exceptional blood essence, the fused energy was strong enough to allow him to forge continuously for a long time. The exhaustion he faced in the past was just that, a thing of the past. When both were separated, he could transfer his other abilities on their own. For instance, his soul power could not partake in his abilities which were related to the Golden Dragon King bloodline. He could only transfer with his pure blood essence power. Hence, Tang Wulin was not only practicing his forging abilities when he forged. He was also feeling the changes in his body as he familiarized himself with the various abilities he obtained when he obtained 4 soul rings. This was the most important thing to him. When dusk came, Tang Wulin dragged his fatigued body back to the cabin. The only thing he wanted after a good dinner was a good sleep. As he lay on the bed, he felt his entire body relax and suddenly felt an intriguing sensation. He had been cultivating with painstaking effort all along to continuously elevate himself. He always thought of his inadequacies as he noticed others who were more powerful than himself while he chased in the footsteps of his companions. Now that he cleared his mind, he stopped and turned around to take a look occasionally to realize that his hard work did not go to waste. He had been progressive swiftly all along. It was similar to how he felt toward a few of his earlier acquaintances like Zhong Yanzi and Wang Jinsi that motivated him to elevate much faster in the beginning. They were now similarly motivated to catch up to his progress. Without noticing, he was close to becoming one who was capable of entering the inner courts of Shrek Academy. Not only was he a member of the Tang sect's Battle Soul Hall, he was also a disciple of the sect master of the Body sect. How miraculous can this world get? He suddenly felt a surge happiness. Everyone had a different definition of happiness. To some, happiness was being content. To others, a mild and pleasant life meant happiness. However, Tang Wulin gradually realized that these 2 types of happiness were not the ones he sought through his growth. His happiness originated from his powers, his continuous hunger for power for a steady advancement toward a higher cause and a further direction. He could still vaguely remember the words his father spoke to him when he was young. Contentment could make a person happy for a lifetime, but this alone was a mediocre and unambitious happiness. Only insatiable greed could motivate a person, as greed would enable one's continued progress while hard work enabled one to continuously improve. It was quite likely that 99% of natural talents were brought on purely by luck. However, without that single percentage of hard work, everything would become a waste. Tang Wulin never truly understood his father's words until now and had taken fancy in greed. He had taken fancy in the greed to pursue power, along with the sense of accomplishment that had gripped him over and over again. His ultimate goal was the Star Sea. Thud. Tang Wulin almost leaped from the bed and instinctively jumped to the ground with a soft thud. The balcony door opened, and Mu Yi looked at him with a spurious smile plastered across his face while his hands were kept in his pockets. It seems to me like you're not self-complacent yet. This is good. Mu Yi nodded toward Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin could not help falling into a trance as he looked at the teacher who deterred the great beast this morning right before him. He even felt a sense of incredulity that his teacher was such a powerful being. Teacher? Tang Wulin saluted Mu Yi respectfully. This is hard, but I'm finally feeling some sincerity in you. Let's go. Mu Yi waved his hand at Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin was stunned for a moment. What are we doing? Mu Yi exclaimed, we're training. Tang Wulin spoke in astonishment, I thought it has already ended. My martial soul's second awakening was completed, was it not? Mu Yi answered matter-of-factly, now, whoever told you it has ended? That was only the first and also the easiest stage of training. You're about to begin the second stage of training. Could it be that you're trying to slack now? The corners of Tang Wulin's mouth twitched slightly. Only? That was only? That 49 days of torturing on the brink of death, only? Teacher, don't you think that your precious disciple deserves a good rest for once? Adequate relaxation is good for elevating oneself a step closer, Tang Wulin declared sincerely. That's for ordinary people. Are you ordinary? You're the little monster from Shrek Academy. Stop talking nonsense, go. Mu Yi's figure flashed as he uttered those words before he took hold of Tang Wulin. At the next moment, both of them were already on the surface of the sea once more. Teacher, can you be less cruel to me? Tang Wulin wailed sorrowfully. Don't give me that. Will you succeed if I was never cruel to you? Your grand-teacher once told me that if he were to treat me more ruthlessly during my earlier years that I could probably become a true powerhouse. Tang Wulin's face was filled with frustration. It seemed like putting on a play before his teacher was useless. If that's the case, I'll just work harder then. In reality, he had never thought of slacking at all. To his surprise, Mu Yi did not bring Tang Wulin too far away from the ship this time around. The first 49 days of cultivation was the first stage, mainly meant to squeeze the potential from your body in hopes that you'll be pushed to complete your martial soul's second awakening and adjust your entire body. Now that this is complete, we'll proceed with external refinement. Your body's strength, natural talent, and blood essence are exceedingly impressive. That's why I came up with this great idea to give you an absolutely pleasurable sensation. For some unknown reason, Tang Wulin felt his hair stand up upon hearing Mu Yi's words. Pleasurable sensation? What sort of pleasurable sensation was he talking about? A rope that was made of some unknown material was wrapped around Tang Wulin's hands while the other end of the rope was tied to the oceanic large ship's tail in the distance. Afterward, Tang Wulin turned into a dragged object on the surface of the sea. It felt like the ship traveled at the speed it usually did. However, the feeling was completely different now that he was being dragged from the back of the ship. Without his arms to balance himself, it was absolutely impossible for him to stand up. Tang Wulin could not even utter a word of objection. At this moment, he had already been dragged until he seemed like he was flying on the surface of the sea. His body continuously dipped into the sea, colliding with the mighty waves before he was abruptly dragged out and slammed onto the surface of the sea. He appeared to be no more than a little black shadow that rose and fell when seen from a distance. The ocean had no reason or rhythm. He floated and sank as he continuously lashed about in the ocean. Worst of all, Mu Yi also directly sealed Tang Wulin's soul power and blood essence, making him incapable of moving the energy in his body to support himself. This is a form of forging too. The sea is forging your body. Share, the second stage. How long will it last, Ua? Tang Wulin's voice was heard intermittently along with the sound of waves crashing. Until we've arrived at the Star Luo continent. By the time Tang Wulin returned to his room an hour later, he seemed like a puddle of mud. Mu Yi had a very good control of his body's condition after all these training sessions. He could always end the training when he could not take it any longer. Tang Wulin had never disappointed him either. After a few hours of being dragged on the surface of the sea, Tang Wulin's body was now red and swollen. Mu Yi did not immediately remove the seal on Tang Wulin's blood essence and soul power, but he used a special potion of the body sect on his entire body before he did. As he did this, he also forced Tang Wulin to cultivate cross-legged. Such bitter days had just begun. Tang Wulin spent almost every day in deep distress and suffering until he was informed that he has arrived on the Star Luo continent. When a stretch of black appeared on the horizon in the distance, Tang Wulin was almost moved to tears. He had finally lived through the suffering days. The people from the Star Luo continent also cheered in unison, because this was home to them. The Star Luo continent's coastal seemed quite similar to the Doluo continent when seen from a distance. Even the architectural style of the pier in the distance was also slightly different from the Doluo continent. All those grand welcoming ceremonies and the rest were nothing but a mere formality to the people from Shrek Academy. Here, the two diplomatic corps finally parted after such a long journey. The Star Luo Continent's Diplomatic Corps was directly dismissed for the holidays, while the Doluo Continent's Diplomatic Corps had just begun their visit. This'll be the itinerary. We'll initially arrive in the Star Luo Continent's capital in the Star Luo Empire, Star Luo City. Then, we'll be participating in a series of sparring competitions. The main target of the exchange program is the Royal Star Luo Academy's representative team. Then we're going to head toward. Wu Zhangkong's chilly voice told the masses what they were going to do next. Most of his announcement was about the Academy's student exchange and some sightseeing activities at a few points of interest on the Star Luo continent. Among all the students, Tang Wulin listened the most intently. His face was also filled with anticipation. The others, even the girls, were much calmer than he was. "Captain, why do you look so happy?" Xu Lixi touched Tang Wulin and asked in a soft voice. "Huh? Am I?" Tang Wulin touched his own face. "Your eyes are filled with longing." Xu Lixi laughed foolishly. Tang Wulin chuckled. It was true. How could he not look forward to this? They were finally breaking free from the ocean. When he thought back to the days at sea after they were attacked, the sensations of pain, numbness, and itchiness that he felt, he shuddered even in the perfectly warm weather. He was finally free of the burden. That being said, the 2 months' voyage on the ocean was also a journey of great change for him. The person he had become was vastly different from what he was before. Under the arrangement of the Star Luo Empire, they first rested at the city by the sea for 1 night, then they took the express Soul train directly to the Star Luo Empire and headed toward its capital, Star Luo City. "Good day, Elder Cai." As the official representative of the Star Luo Empire, the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Sima Lanxiao had always been courteous toward Elder Cai. "Hello," Elder Cai replied dryly. Sima Lanxiao smiled. "Elder Cai, I have something to discuss with you. We've just received word that there's an ongoing grand competition for young soul masters in the capital of our Star Luo Empire. Coincidentally, the first stop of your itinerary on this trip is Star Luo City. The Shrek Academy students you've brought with you are also the outstanding ones of their generation, and I wonder if they would be interested in taking part in our Young Soul Masters competition. They might be slightly disadvantaged in terms of age, but this is certainly the grandest and highest level competition for the young generation of the Star Luo continent. If your students can participate, they will definitely be the main highlight of the competition. It would be an excellent way to promote it." Elder Cai smiled plainly. "We're only here for the exchange. There's no need for us to enter a competition." Sima Lanxiao said, "Elder Cai, it won't be troublesome at all. With the abilities of these Shrek Academy students, they can skip the preliminary rounds. They'll start off from the elimination rounds. It won't take too much of your time. Also, we can guarantee their safety." Elder Cai stole a glance at Sima Lanxiao and said dryly, "I'm not worried about that." Sima Lanxiao was slightly stunned, but he understood her soon enough. His gaze flickered slightly. "It seems that you're very confident in your disciples." Elder Cai smiled faintly. "Confidence comes from true strength. If you insist on having us taking part in the competition no matter what, it's not that we can't, but the prize for the champion must be a soul bone." Sima Lanxiao's expression changed. Naturally, he was very aware of what a soul bone was. Even 20,000 years ago, when the Doluo continent was still in the medieval era, soul bones were the absolute treasure of treasures. In modern times, the rarity of a soul bone was unimaginable. Soul bones came from soul beasts, but every soul beast produced a different soul ring. The probability that a soul bone would be produced was 1 in 10,000. Only in 100,000-year soul beasts could soul bones be found with certainty. On the Doluo continent, where the soul beast population had withered and scattered about, it was extremely difficult to obtain a soul bone. If any of the great clans passed down a soul bone from generation to generation, it would be the most precious treasure of the family, the existence of which would also be a closely guarded secret. Although the circumstances on the Star Luo continent were slightly different from the Doluo continent, a soul bone was no less rare here. Elder CAI, our competition is called the Continental Young High Ranking Soul Masters Elite Competition, and there are several different categories. There are the solo competition, team competition, mecha competition, and others. About the soul bone that you've mentioned, we only have one prepared for the champion of the integrated solo competition. In the team contests, the grand prize of the 7-member team competition is one piece of spirit refined metal for each member. For the 2 against 2 competition, the prize is a 10,000-year spirit item. The grand prize for the champion of the mecha competition is a black and purple mechas for the runner-up and the second runner-up. So, under the circumstances where there's only one piece of soul bone, what do you? Elder CAI's brows rose slightly. She had not expected that the prizes for the Continental Young High-Ranking Soul Masters Elite Competition of the Star Luo continent to be this generous. Not only was there a soul bone, but the other prizes were also very attractive. Sounds good, but the disparity between the prizes for the various categories seems a bit much. Spirit refined metals, mechas, and heaven and earth treasures spirit grass were fine, but they were not nearly as rare as a soul bone. Sima Lanciao said, the reason why the prize for the 1 against 1 is this generous is because the category is known as the Unlimited Challenge. Also, the participants have to sign a waiver. Only an extremely precious prize is able to attract a large number of participants. The 1 against 1 category is also the most important competition among all the categories. This was different from the situation on the Doluo continent. On the Doluo continent, the 7 against 7 team battle was the highlight of the event. However, in this place, individualistic heroism was clearly more highly advocated. What are the restrictions of participation? Elder CAI asked brusquely. Joy arose in Sima Lanciao's heart. He knew that she was slightly swayed. Below 20 years old. There aren't any other restrictions, especially for all of you from Shrek Academy. Okay. Elder CAI's reply only consisted of one simple word. Tang Wulin and the others were at quite a loss. They had just arrived on the Star Luo continent and they were about to face a new competition. They were currently sitting on board the luxurious Express Soul train, enjoying the sights that were unique to the Star Luo continent. Compared to the Doluo continent's bustling and mechanized cities, the Star Luo continent was clearly more primitive. After all, the Doluo continent had been developed for a much longer duration compared to the Star Luo continent. The speed of the Soul train was also much slower. Beyond the window, forests and lakes appeared with no end. The air was so clear that their eyes could see far into the distance. They occasionally passed by some cities. Under close scrutiny, they could see that there was still a gap in modernization between here and the Doluo continent. The food of the Star Luo continent was not much different from that of the Doluo continent. The extremely sumptuous cuisine was served on the train for the members of the diplomatic corps. They enjoyed the scenery as they ate delicious meals. This was virtually their first ever experience of a relaxing trip. At the very least, after they joined Shrek Academy, they had never had such a good time. There were also members of the diplomatic corps from the Royal Star Luo Academy on the same train as Tang Wulin and the others. All of them sat on the same coach. When they had just boarded the ship, there had been some friction on both sides. However, they gradually familiarized themselves with each other and never really came into conflict. The seats on the train were arranged in such a way that 2 pairs of passengers would be seated facing each other with a table between them. Gu sat beside Tang Wulin. Xu Lixi sat opposite him while Yi Xinglan sat opposite Gu. Xie Xie, Xu Xiaoyuan, Yu Jingyu, and Yuan Yehue sat at another table. Currently, Tang Wulin and Xu Lixi were gobbling down all the food that they could get their hands on. They had not stopped from the moment they boarded the train. To them, nothing was more important than eating. On Royal Star Luo Academy's side, 4 were seated at each table as well. Their gazes would shift toward Tang Wulin and the others every now and then. That guy can really eat, a young girl said softly, and he looks quite handsome too. Another girl who sat opposite her could hardly suppress her laugh. Junjun, are you trying to rob the cradle? He's 4 or 5 years younger than we are. He's the captain of the representative team from Shrek Academy. Did you see when the oceanic soul beasts had us surrounded? The unknown martial soul he released that looked like a flood of dragons was really powerful. He's so young, but he already has 4 rings. Don't you boost other people's morale and reduce your own courage? Our captain is already rank 45, and he's certainly not weaker than him. Besides, our captain is already a one-word battle armor master. He, on the other hand, doesn't have a full set of battle armor. The Royal Star Luo Academy students stole glances at Tang Wulin and the others as they whispered among themselves. I've heard that the Empire has already invited them to participate in this year's Continental Young High-Ranking Soul Masters Elite competition. I think our next meeting will be on the competition stage. What competition would that be? They may be from Shrek Academy, but they are still younger than us. I think they'll be in the junior competition. At least that way, they might have a shot at the championship. No, I think they are participating in the youth group. The Empire is being a little unfair with this. Well, you can't actually say that. After all, we're the host. In any case, we'll have to hit them hard from the start. I've heard that the Monster Academy is also going to take part. Is this a battle between the true and false Shrek? A female student covered her mouth and laughed. Be careful with your words. The Empire holds the Monster Academy in high regard. As he shoved dim sum into his mouth, Tang Wulin seemed to be lost in thought. Monster Academy? What was that? The second evolution of his martial soul had brought about many other changes. The Golden Dragon King's bloodline power and the Blue-Silver Emperor martial soul had fused together completely, bringing a comprehensive enhancement to his abilities. For example, his hearing had become much more sensitive. Captain, do you feel nervous riding a soul train? Xie laughed softly. Tang Wulin glared at him angrily. This isn't the Federation. I don't think we'll be running into the evil Soul Master. That said, his previous experiences riding soul trains did not exactly leave him with fond memories. Almost every time, he was faced with something unpleasant. He even narrowly escaped death on one occasion. The Academy had sent him to the Star Luo continent partly to have him hide from the threat of the evil Soul Master. However, Tang Wulin was still in a good mood. Although what he had endured over the past 2 months could be seen as a deplorable ordeal, he still broke through rank 40 in the end and obtained the 10,000-year soul ring which induced the second awakening of his martial soul. He had undergone a complete transformation, and he finally caught up with the pace of his companions, both in terms of his cultivation base and his martial soul. He could break through the 5th level of the Golden Dragon King seal at any time, and he would not be faced with any threats for now. His forging had officially reached rank 6. Due to his ample preparation, he had already completed the spirit forging and fuse forging of 3 types of metals. He had easily reached the standard of a rank 6 blacksmith. Indeed, for that rank, he could already be considered an old hand. Of course, he still had a long way to go if he wanted to reach the rank of divine craftsman. Not only would he need to further boost his cultivation base, but also his multi-metal fuse forging and spirit forging skills. What excited Tang Wulin the most was his cultivation speed. After the second awakening of his martial soul, he could get twice the results with half the effort using the mysterious heaven method. Currently, a single day's worth of developing his soul power would have taken 3 days before. When the others reached rank 40, their cultivation speed dropped. On the other hand, his had greatly increased. With a rate of improvement like this, by the time he was 20, he was confident that he would reach rank 60. If he could complete his 2-word battle armor by that time, then he would truly be able to join the ranks of the experts. This speed of his was at least 5 years quicker than Teacher Wu back then. He joined his hands behind his head and casually leaned back in his chair. There was a hint of a smile on his face. He took in the scenery beyond the windows. This was a rare opportunity for him to enjoy the moment. Eh? What's that? Is that a mecha? Tang Wulin suddenly noticed that beyond the window, there was a patch of black dots moving swiftly through the air in the distant skies. He focused his gaze slightly and utilized his purple demon eyes. What he saw was a fleet of mechas. The models of these mechas were distinctly different from those in the Doluo continent. The soul mechas of the Doluo continent were basically humanoid, whereas the mechas he was looking at now had numerous different shapes. They were in the forms of various beasts and were unlike anything he had ever seen. So these were the mechas of Star Luo Empire. What were those spots of light? Tang Wulin suddenly saw that something began to light up on the mechas. At the same time, Elder Cai, who had been sitting with her eyes closed in rest, abruptly opened them. She turned and looked toward the scenery outside the window. Enemy attack! Tang Wulin screamed and immediately jumped out of his seat. He was not the only one who had reacted. A gush of frosty aura suddenly burst forth from the seat in front. Shortly after, a beam of cold light swirled in a circle on the ceiling of the coach. Suddenly, everyone felt a cold wind blow past the tops of their heads, and the top part of the coach was blown away. A strong wind howled as it blew into the coach. Wu Zhangkong's body flashed and grabbed Tang Wulin. The tips of his toes tapped on the floor as he leaped into the sky. At this critical moment, Tang Wulin's personal qualities manifested themselves. At the instant after he raised the alarm, blue-silver grass vines had already rushed out like a swarm of bees and wrapped around his companions. The others kept their cool as well. A circle of green rings was released from Guu's body and enveloped the entire coach. Everyone in the coach felt their bodies lighten. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.